Guys, there's a lot of unfinished business still pending in Cardano, but today I want to tie up one very big loose end. I just want to thank Charles and IOG for everything they've done for us. If you have a sneaking suspicion that people will be a lot more grateful to Charles and IOG once we're no longer sub 30 cents, or if you're finding value in these videos, please consider delegating to the Army of Spies DRep address and the Army of Spies stake pool, ticker AOS. All right, everybody, thank you for joining. Let's see who's here. D-Not-U is here. Hello. D-Not-U is another like for that algorithm. Hear you at the live stream. Thank you for joining, D-Not-U. Fly Over Me is here. Charles' video today breaking down this mess of an act was a pretty good one. We're going to talk about it. Dr. Doak says, yes, Charles had a good old rant. Pucky Hawk says, let's go. Moon prayers. Pretty much. This is more like a thank you. Less praying and more like thank you. Omar Wright says, greetings. Let's fucking go. Let's fucking go, Omar. Pucky Hawk says, let's fucking go. Exactly. Neo Chad says, thanks. Brown says, good reinforcement from Charles yesterday with the Wendy O interview and his solo video drop today. No bill is still much better than a bad bill. We're going to talk about it. I haven't watched all of the Wendy O interview, and I've watched like half of his video from today, but we're going to talk about his video from today at least, and his position on this bill. I just wish we had a Senate that could occasionally get their heads out of their own asses every once in a while. They're dragging us all down without any deliberation. Party affiliation, be damned. That is certainly all true. And it's just like tribalistic warfare versus the common good, right? It's left versus right warfare versus the common good, and the common good tends to lose for sure. Otis Free Joe, let's go AOS fam, let's go. Jay Marie says, hello, let's go. What is Frito says, stay safe out there. Robbery force is real. I am now getting letters from a hardware wallet telling me to scan a QR code for a quantum resistance firmware update. God damn these guys. Fuck these robbers. Fuck the robbers, for real. Don't fall for these scams. Exactly. Do not respond to anybody who emails you about crypto. Just don't do it. Don't respond to anybody. You get a message on Twitter. Somebody's like, hey, I need you to do the following thing. Don't do it. You get an email. Somebody says something, they need you to do something having to do with crypto. Just don't do it. Just don't ever do anything anybody tells you to do in crypto. Just don't do it. Rulo says, hola, gracias, IOG. I agree. Muchas gracias, IOG. Joe Davidson says, hello. Streetwise says, hi, AOS. Hey, Joe. Hey, Streetwise. Blue Mammal is still here. Thank you for joining, Blue Mammal. Much appreciated. Afro in the Wind says, ready, let's go. S. Walker's here. Bro, sorry about last night. You pulled up my disc and I was outside. Laugh out loud. Just tell me, did you see it? And did I have the right one? Have you seen it now? That's what I'm curious about. Thanks to one of the greatest to ever do it, Charles. That is certainly true. I agree with that. I dig the spicy Charles, whether or not that behooves the ecosystem, though. Haha. Yeah, I agree. There are some questions there. There's some questions about what's better for the ecosystem, but I do like the spicy Charles. I've said it many times. It's almost like it's a really good idea for a hardware wallet maker to have good infosec so they don't lose all of our data. God damn you, Ledger. Ledger, if you get hacked one more time, I'm now living in a different location, but if you get hacked one more time, God damn it. I don't know that I ever. Yeah, a Ledger does not have my current location, but God damn it. Like, please don't get hacked anymore, Ledger. For the love of God. I mean, they are targeted a lot though. We've discussed on this channel how they snagged one of the founders and his wife, I think, or girlfriend, wife. And didn't they cut off his finger or something? The kidnapper. Horrible shit. Horrible. So it's not like they're not paying a personal price for it, but goddamn it, Ledger, please don't lose my shit anymore. Robbery force is scary. I just got a copious land. I want to keep that safe. There you go. I agree. Did I keep my cornucopias lands on my Ledger? So again, Ledger, don't lose my shit, please. This was a damn snail mail letter. Jesus Christ. That is horrifying. That's horrifying. If I get a snail mail letter from a crypto scammer, I'm going to be extremely pissed. Jose Cano, hello. Thanks for joining. Streetwise says, S Walker, dude, I can't see anything. What are you talking about? Okay, we'll pull. I've actually got it as one of the tabs because I wasn't sure if S Walker saw the last one I pulled up, but we can look at it again tonight. Brian Packard, good evening. Okay. Good evening, Brian Packard. S Walker says, of course I saw it, and yes, you saw it too. Save the image. Use filters to really make it pop out. She's beautiful. Okay, so I did have the right one. Okay. I included it as a tab again tonight because I wasn't sure if you saw it, S Walker. We're gonna look at it again tonight. And I believe I can see exactly what you're talking about. So we'll look at it again tonight. Hill Dog, yes, Ledger screwed me since 2018. Still getting threats of the $5 wrench attack. God damn it. I don't even read my crypto email from Kraken. Same. It's like I occasionally get shit from the centralized exchanges, which have obviously KYC'd me, and like anytime I get anything involving crypto, I just assume it's a spoofed email and they're attackers. So anything they ask me to do, if there's like news in there, if it's like, hey, here's some news, I'm like, okay, good. I'll assume there's a, 55% chance these are just attackers anyways, but I'll check later on social media to see if this news is true. But links, I do not click on shit inside any link from any centralized exchange or anything else having to do with crypto. I just automatically assume it's an attack of some type. Emails especially, social media messages especially, any link anybody sends me, anytime anybody asks me to do anything, I'm just like, nope, I just assume it's an attacker, right? It's like the De Niro character in Ronin when he says, if there is any doubt, there is no doubt. So if you even have 1% doubt it could be an attacker, you have to assume 100% it's an attacker, according to the De Niro character in Ronin. That is how I operate. And anytime I get any email, I'm not an expert on email spoofery. I just assume, even if it says kraken.com, I assume it's spoofed somehow in some way I don't know about yet. So I just assume any email I get from any centralized exchange is some bullshit. I don't click on anything. You still have any Pavia stuff? Is that a question to me? Sorry, probably too soon. I have never sold any metaverse property ever. In like the very first few days of Pavia, I only ever had like, I think 3 Pavia properties, which I said back in those days at the time. I even told everybody where all my properties were back in the episode where we talked about Spy Beach. I showed everybody exactly where my properties were and exactly how many. But I think the only metaverse properties I ever sold, I never even sold them. I just exchanged. I traded somebody a Pavia property, or I traded somebody a Pavia property for one that was closer to the property I had, which was on the shoreline. And then I think that's the only metaverse property I ever disposed of, but I didn't actually sell it. I just traded somebody for a different one so that I could have 3 contiguous properties. And I think 3, I can't remember now, but I think 3 was the total I had. I think it's 3, but no, I never sold any metaverse stuff. I've still got it all. It's all just sitting on ledgers. So I fully assume that nothing will ever happen with those, but I've still got them. Yeah, if I recall correctly, though, trading that one is the only one I ever did anything with. I think there were some Ada Realm ones. I think I did the same thing with some Ada Realm plots, which were very low value compared to like Pavia and Cornucopias and the rest. But some Ada Realm ones, I think I also did some trading so that I could get like a bunch of contiguous properties. But it was more like, I think I traded a few just for other properties, but selling, no, not that I can recall. So what are some other hardware wallet options? I mean, the big one is what's either you guys know Trezor. I always blank on the name now. There's Trezor, and people can chime in if they have some favorites. There's always like some people that have their advocates and proponents of the other hardware wallets. I've only used Ledger, so I can't speak to the other. I covered when Ledger moved to the system where they have access to your key, and all of a sudden we learned some new things about how your private key is stored on your Ledger. I covered that very extensively on this channel. So there's some details to be aware of there, and you should probably go back if you're curious. Definitely not you Streetwise necessarily, but anybody listening to this, if you're curious about those those details, I'll just call them details. They were controversial details, but those details around Ledger, you can go back and watch those videos. People still read their emails. That's a better question. Good morning, Mission Zambia. Good morning. Okay, Puppers knows you never send one bone to try to get two. Well put. Well fucking put, Puppers. I agree with that. That's well put. Wow, Ronin callback. That movie had me drooling over the Audi S8 as a kid. That was a great fucking movie. That was a great fucking movie. Man, they do not make movies like that anymore. I love the Michael Mann movies, Heat, Collateral, and I also love Ronin. There are a lot of movies, a lot of good movies. I love the Chris Eyre movies. I kind of put them in the same category. The Michael Mann movies, Ronin, the Chris Eyre movies. I kind of put all those. That's like I might be fucking up his name, but it's like Harsh Times and all those movies he made. I put those in the same category. They do not make movies like that anymore. That shit is not made anymore. Although I believe Heat 2 is coming out. You guys can tell me if this is bullshit or not, but on today on social media, I saw that Heat 2 is coming out and it's going to have Christian Bale, Leonardo DiCaprio, and that one kid whose name I always forget. I assume because he has spiky hair in the pictures I saw, I assume he's playing the Val Kilmer character. You guys can tell me. You guys probably know better than me what's going on. But if there's a Heat 2 and Michael Mann is involved, I'm fucking down. I'm down for that. D9Use is enjoying the stream. Streetwise, do your own research, but I really like it and have had great success with Keystone. I knew we were gonna have some Keystone proponents because there are always people who have great things to say about Keystone. I've never used it before, so I can't opine on that, but they have a great feature set and security stance. Okay. I knew Keystone was gonna be the first one that people mentioned. I am the same. I'm from the hood and I don't trust nothing. I ain't clicking on shit. I don't even answer numbers that aren't saved in my phone because it's probably a scam. Same. I just had a conversation about this with somebody who's in my place in person. We had a conversation about how we don't answer the fucking phone anymore at all. Unless it's somebody who's saved in my phone, like this is ex friend or relative. Like I do not answer the fucking phone because it's always just because I had that conversation. I actually answered 2 phone calls today. I get a huge amount of phone calls for reasons I won't go into, but my phone is ringing all the fucking time. And I actually answered 2 of them just to confirm to myself because I haven't actually answered them in years. But to confirm to myself that it was all bullshit, I answered. Both calls were AI. They were both AI talking to me. You know it's AI when you're like, hello, and there's this like long ass pause, and then it's like, hello, and then you're like, yes, and then there's a long ass pause, and then all of a sudden the voice. This one, they even had the call center background noises, even though it was obviously AI. They had layered in call center background noises to make it more believable, but it was super not believable, which will change pretty quickly. Pretty quickly, it'll get very believable. But okay, my kid was the James Bond Lotus Esprit S1 because it went under. Oh, my kid car. I thought you were saying your kid was one of these like for Halloween or something. I was like, shit, your kid was a Lotus Esprit for Halloween. My kid car was the James Bond Lotus Esprit S1 because it went underwater and had missiles. I remember that James Bond very well. I couldn't tell you the name of that particular installment in the franchise, but I remember it very fucking well. I personally think the Epstein files, what is the last nail in the coffin for the MAGA coalition? I think that's why we kidnapped Maduro and also why we went to war with Iran. De-dollarization is happening. Jay Garza, I get why you think that. I get why someone would take that approach to why Venezuela and Iran are happening. But I think there's a more likely conspiracy theory, and it has to do with having control over China's oil supply. I think that's like there are other nefarious reasons, right? Why we would want to increase our influence over Venezuela and get rid of the regime in Iran. If you want to go down the nefarious conspiracy theory, I don't even think this is a conspiracy theory. It's just fact that they were both supplying oil to China. So I don't even think you need to come up with an Epstein file related reason. It's kind of a bonus. I'm sure Trump doesn't hate that, pressure on the Epstein files is being taken off by this, but I don't think you need to go to any other conspiracy theories. It's just like, I mean, super obvious who was buying a lot of the oil. When you look at there was a lot of talk, even just today on social media on X, about what percentage of the oil consumption of China can be assigned to Iran and Venezuela. And it looks pretty low, but for a long, long time, and I've said this many times on the channel, one of the principal things that people don't mention about any hypothetical conflict between China and the US is that China doesn't have a real blue water navy. And the US could just stick a strike carrier group in the Indian Ocean and cut off all flow of waterborne oil from the Persian Gulf to China, right? If we have a US friendly government somehow in Tehran, and we have the Saudis who are, variably friendly to the US, largely friendly to the US. They're a consumer of US defense goods, right? We've kind of got both sides of the goddamn Persian Gulf locked up there. So I don't even think, sure, I'm sure Trump is not sad that people are talking about something other than the files right now, but I don't even think you need to go there if you want to find a nefarious reason for this. I think there are other reasons too, though. I'm not saying that's what I believe is the primary reason. I'm saying there are a lot of possible reasons. Ledger's my only one I use. I love it, but the damn data breach, god damn it, yeah, so sad. Guys, if I could tell you about a data breach, I don't even know. It was in the news. It was in the news, but I could tell you about a data breach that it was in the news that affected me. My name was in a database that had, not for any bad reasons, but my name was in a data breach. It was in a database for a good reason, and the party who hacked that database is a very not good party, very not good party. Whose radar to be on, and yeah, it was a very secure. I'll say it was a very secure database. A database you would assume is very, very secure, and I was very displeased for this party to have my name and what they assumed about me based on my name being in that database. I'll put it that way. So the Ledger one pissed me off, but there was actually another one that pissed me off even more for special reasons beyond economic reasons. Prison wallet approved. Yeah, that was a Trezor. That was a Trezor, right? The Luna guy, I believe he used a Trezor, which is so funny because it's totally wider. It's totally wider than the Ledger. So the question is Ledger or Coinbase more likely to lose all your crypto? For a long time I've said, like, one of the funny things about centralized exchanges is if they have enough money, you have to ask yourself whether they ever tell you that your crypto got hacked, because there's certain centralized exchanges, and I'm not necessarily talking about the one you mentioned, but there's certain centralized exchanges that have never reported a hack. And I'm like, chances are they have gotten hacked and they just covered the losses and they were like, well, we made them whole, so there's no reason to even tell them. That's what that's been my long held suspicion about that. Hilldog, Collateral is so good. Oh my God. There's so many reasons why that show is so good. Listen to, if you can ever access it, it's hard to get now that we don't have DVDs anymore, but if you listen to the Michael Mann commentary on Collateral, that shit is so good. That shit is so good. Hell yeah. Never seen Ronin. Just put it on. Oh yeah, dude. If you've never seen Ronin, put that shit in. I mean, it might seem a little dated. It's a product of its time, but goddamn, that was a good show for its time. It was so good. Never say yes on the phone. Agree with that. If you ever have a real estate transaction, geez, they never stop, dude. Oh yeah. Real estate. The closings of real estate transactions are some of the biggest targets for wire fraud. The number of people who accidentally wire their earnest money to fraudsters instead of to escrow or a title company or whatever is insane. That's a really, really big problem. They can record the yes. Oh my God, that's terrible. Good morning, Dolph B. Wolf. Thank you for joining. Diamonds are forever, or maybe die another day. God, it's so long ago. There's no way I could even remember which one it was. But I've definitely seen both of those. I love LifeLock. It scans for my crypto stuff constantly. I recommend. Okay, cool. Sony PlayStation has been hacked a number of times too. They've got the one, if not the worst, for InfoSec. Oh, I didn't know that. Puggyhawk says it was the spy who loved me. Okay. Yeah, I knew it. Yeah, that sounds about the right age. Die Another Day definitely sounded too recent to me, but it's been so long since I've seen those, I don't remember. Credit freeze is best. Okay, we've talked about fraudsters. Let's get on with it, guys. Let's talk about it. So for a long time, I've been saying that Cardano would not really appreciate. Okay, one more. Ledger and Coinbase are too different to compare. They have different vulnerabilities. So in some ways, one is worse than the other, but in other ways, it's the opposite. Also very true. Also very true. For a long time, I've been saying that Cardano would not really appreciate Charles until he was gone. And by that, I didn't mean when he died. I meant when there was nothing left to do in Cardano and he was focused on other things. I felt this way for a really long time, that once Charles was gone, people would look around and be like, holy shit, there used to be somebody doing all these things, taking care of all these things, paying attention to it. Now that we don't have Charles, we realize how much he was doing for us. I think that hasn't happened yet, right? He just built out a whole partner chain for Cardano, whose primary asset lives on Cardano. So Charles is not gone yet. But no, I do not. I do not have any of Sailor's shit. I do not have any of Sailor's securities. So and it's because I like to self-custody shit. I don't want paper Bitcoin. I have actual Bitcoin, on my hardware wallet. So it's like, why would I buy Sailor shit when I can, I'm like familiar enough with crypto. I can just buy and self-custody crypto. I'll always choose self-custody over paper. I don't think there's anything wrong with paper exposure to crypto. But for me, I'll always choose self-custody. If you want to know why, read all of Caitlin Long's stuff on paper Bitcoin versus self-custody Bitcoin. So Nintendo got hacked and the big Sony hack too, but the hackers were like, Nintendo is cool, so we won't compromise them. Nowadays, Nintendo is kind of litigious though. Okay. Okay. I didn't know the history on any of that. That's very interesting. So Charles is not gone, but I think we don't take out enough time to just like thank Charles and IOG. There's such a huge contrast between what he's done as a founder in this ecosystem and what most happens in most other ecosystems, right? Like Charles is sort of most often compared to like Vitalik, right? Because they were both there at the beginnings of Ethereum, and famously there was beef between them way back in the day when they were both young guys, right? So that's all certainly true. But the difference between Charles and Ethereum is that Charles has a lot of other interests. As near as I can tell, Vitamin Butters is just like couch surfing around Asia and being the emperor of Ethereum, right? So very different situation. Like Charles has a million other things he's obviously highly interested in. Bioluminescent plants, longevity clinic, his investments in, bringing the woolly mammoth back, all these things. Midnight, he does all these things other than Cardano. He has a million reasons to actually move on. I don't know, Vitamin Butters, of course, has his own set of interests, but it's very different. He is very actively the unofficial emperor of Ethereum, right? And he sticks around. So everybody assumes Charles would stick around forever. But if you look at almost any other ecosystem, even if they're still running the ecosystem, they're not nearly as involved as Charles. Like Charles, he's doing AMAs all the time. You can go on his AMAs, ask him a question. He's going to directly communicate with you, directly answer your question, right? He's done that for many people probably watching this video right now. If you go on Twitter, if you write some shit, good chance if it's about Cardano, and you address him, good chance he'll respond to you, right? At least prior to this year. Thank God in 2026, he's pulled back a little bit. I would rather have him still in the ecosystem and pulled back from social media. But lately, IOG has done some more stuff for us. And I'm like, this is a stack of things IOG has done for us they didn't really need to do. I remember when I first got into Cardano, the whole story was that, IOG did a bunch of stuff to build Cardano as one of the three founding entities, along with Emergo and the CF, the Cardano Foundation. And they got a pile of ADA to do that. Not that much compared to any other ecosystem. I mean, what does it work out to? Like 19%, 17%, of the float. Not that much, but they got a piece of that 19%. That was the all three founding entities together. In the aggregate, they got less than 20%. And IOG got their part of that. And the whole deal was they were going to continue, working for some number of years. I can't remember, it was like 2 years. And then the ecosystem was going to have to, the ecosystem could basically tender out who was going to keep building on the ecosystem. And if it wanted IOG, it could, pay IOG. So whatever number of years that was, 2 years or whatever, it came along and it passed. And IOG didn't demand more money. They didn't demand more money. They just kept building. And the next year came and they kept fucking building. And the next year came and they kept fucking building. And it was like crazy. I was like, these sons of bitches are working for free for us. And they were, because they were only like the deal back in the day when I first got into Cardano. I mean, I knew about Cardano in 2017, but I first started buying tokens in Q1 2018. And the whole deal was, I was like, oh, that's great. IOG will be around for another 2 years. Because at the time, we were just going through the ICO craze. Like companies the lab entity would like drop a coin and you'd never see them again. It's just like, okay, here it is. We're done. And I was like, this is fantastic. They're going to stick around for like another 2 years. This is great. And that 2 years or however long it was, 4 years, I can't remember the number of years. I'm probably fucking it up, but it came and went and they just kept building. They kept building until this day, right? Like finally, when we got governance, we cut off some change for them after all these years just to, to finish off Laos and, to do a few other things. But we finally cut them off, some tokens. And it wasn't an insignificant amount. It wasn't like a tiny amount. It was a large amount of tokens we broke off for them. But they just keep doing shit, right? This has been Charles's MO all along. He like does not turn his back on us. He just keeps building and building and building. And obviously, he's said why he does this. It's because Cardano is his life's work. Cardano is his legacy. He knows for the rest of his life, he'll be judged by the success or failure of Cardano. So I want to take this time to personally thank IOG and Cardano for all the thankless work they've done. Charles famously this year got out of the social media game, sort of. I know it wouldn't last long, right? Today he started his video off. We'll talk about his video, but today he started off the video by saying, basically he had read, about some social media drama, sort of with the XRP crowd, whatever. We're familiar with that. But I was hoping he was not reading social media, but I kind of knew this dream of him not consuming social media and, seeing the aggravating drama stuff. I knew that wasn't going to last too long. But before we get to that, I just want to point out he's still doing shit for us, right? So yesterday we covered this post from Philip Pon, where Philip Pon, who is the CEO of Emergo now, pointed out that Charles and those guys were doing the USDCX thing, knowing they were probably going to lose money. They were literally going to lose money. So Charles posted this today. Was it today? No, a couple days ago. What is this? Friday? No, Saturday. I think he posted this on Saturday. We stepped up and got it done again as the signer of last resort. It's not surprising that there's now criticism of IOG over trivial and idiotic things, but we've gotten used to the pattern from useless trolls. I love Cardano and fight hard every day to advance the ecosystem. Some days, weeks, months, and years are harder than others, and some events like the ADA voucher issue caused permanent damage, but we are still here. There is much unfinished work, and we'll find a path to get it done together. This is obviously a labor of love. This guy loves Cardano. He knows it's his legacy. He's doing stuff like this. I mean, IOG is supposed to be a corporation, right? It's supposed to be a for-profit entity. And sure, he got his tokens, back in the beginning. And famously, that made him like, a 3 billionaire or whatever it was. And he's recently said that with the drop in value, he's lost 3 billion in net worth. So God knows what the total was. But so he obviously, did well by scooping up those tokens right at the beginning of Cardano. Not so much now. The value has gone back down. But the balance of sort of like us treating Charles and IOG well versus us not treating them well, or sort of the balance of us treating IOG and Charles well or not versus what they have given to us is far off. That little seesaw is so unbalanced, right? Especially after this voucher incident. Like, it's hard for anybody, even the mortal enemies, people who think that Charles and IOG are their mortal enemy, and those people do exist in our ecosystem, which is fucking bizarre. But even they would have a hard time making the argument that Charles wasn't completely vindicated in the entire ADA voucher thing. And people said some vile shit about Charles, some vile accusations, and certain other founding entities. They said or didn't say certain things during that whole period, which led to the permanent divorce of IO and the CF, right? Like, I think we all know that went down. We don't need to relitigate those issues here. But I mean, the amount of drama and just vitriol and hatred that has been directed at IO and Charles so far outweighs the amount of gratitude that's been expressed to them. It's bizarre. Truly, no good deed goes unpunished. And I'm not saying Charles didn't do well with his sort of founding allotment of ADA. He obviously did well with it, right? But he could have walked away, right? I'm very tempted to tell the story of some specific other founders in crypto who did exactly that, who walked away, just sort of walked away from the ecosystem one day, and they got off without anybody ever talking any shit to them whatsoever. Charles sticks around forever, keeps building, arguably builds, definitely builds the most decentralized ecosystem ever in crypto, arguably builds the first one to solve the trilemma. As soon as Laos comes out, right? It's not done yet, but as soon as Laos comes out, I think pretty damn good argument he solved the trilemma, which is kind of what first got me into Cardano way back in the day. I think I saw a Reddit post from Charles where he was claiming he solved the trilemma. I was like, oh, I'll buy some of that. And, of course, I think that's probably what led me to watching the whiteboard video and eventually buying ADA. But I want to personally thank IOG and Charles, and I think a lot of other people feel the same way. We're just not the crazy loud bastards who are constantly complaining on social media. So Charles and everybody at IO, because there's a ton of other people who have basically also made Cardano their life's work at IO. Please know there are a ton of us. I believe we were a silent majority. We're just not loud, crazy bastards, but we're all very thankful for what you guys have done, and especially for not walking away from the ecosystem. So I just wanted to say that. Now that I've said that, be aware there is a blog entry which lets you know Midnight Mainnet is in late March 2026. This is the same one that announced Midnight City, a few other things, but be aware. Midnight Mainnet, the federated mainnet, is coming. We are in the Kukolu phase. Remember, the phases were Hilo, Kukolu, Mohalu, and Ua. We are in the Kukolu phase, and federated mainnet is the big event that's going to happen. We're in the month that this happens. Less than a month away, we'll get the federated mainnet. So be aware that is definitely coming. So here's the other side of Charles. The guy who refused to give up on the ecosystem, who won't stop trying to help, who knows his legacy is Cardano. He's also the same guy that does videos like this. So the whole premise of this video, and I think it's a good video. I'm glad he did this video, but this is also the part of Charles that makes me worry, because I was hoping he would avoid doing stuff like this. So he starts with this video and he announces, I'm always glad when I see a Charles video. I'm like, great. Okay, sweet. And he starts off by saying, the XRP people are making noise on social media because he disagrees with Brad Garlinghouse with respect to the premise that a bad bill is better than no bill. So in this whole video, Charles is laying out why he thinks it's a bad bill and how no bill is better than a bad bill. This is the thing that Brian Armstrong got in a huge amount of trouble with the White House over, right? The White House got super pissed because Brian Armstrong was like, we'd rather have no bill than a bad bill. So next question is, though, is this really a bad bill? So first, Charles, he does something pretty smart here. Charles, not a dumb guy. So he pulls up the actual the actual text of the bill. So this is the House bill. The way you know that is it says HR, House Resolution. So this is the House bill. He pulls up the House bill and then he starts asking AI some questions, right? And the thrust of all this is he has the AI here, Gemini, explain, would XRP be a security at the time of launch under the Clarity Act as the bill passed the House? And of course, Gemini says this, based on the text and regulatory framework established by HR 3633, Digital Asset Market Clarity Act, or the Clarity Act, XRP would likely have been classified as an investment contract asset, a security at the time of its initial launch, rather than a digital commodity. This is not a surprise to anyone because despite the fact that we in crypto all celebrated, Ripple's, I guess we can call it a victory over the SEC because we all hated Gary Gensler by the end. The reason why Ripple got singled out like that was that we all knew Ripple was centralized. Ripple was centralized in many ways. And, I will say it's much more centralized than Cardano, at least at launch, just based on ownership of the token, right? So here he takes, Gemini takes us through, all the reasons why it would be declared to be a security at launch. If you're around during those days, everybody back in the day, before the SEC ever sued Ripple, everybody back in the day used to complain that XRP was too centralized, right? So none of us were actually surprised when Gensler and those guys went after Ripple. It was not a surprise, right? So then next he asks Claude, okay, the way, and basically the thrust of all this is like, let's go back to the start. So the way legislation and regulations interact with each other, those are two different things, right? Legislation is law, like statutes passed by Congress, right? Federal law is passed by Congress. It's legislation. The actual representatives of the people get to vote on those laws. But the law can't cover all of the corner cases. So what these laws always do is they tell a regulatory agency, hey, we can't think of all the things that are going to happen here. So you're going to have to make some decisions after the fact when these corner cases come up. Here are the areas where we want you to pass regulations, right? Regulations are not law. They're not statutory law. They're rules passed by agencies. And these agencies are run by people who were not voted in by the people, right? So you've got the Gary Genslers of the world running these agencies and deciding what these regulations are. So the thrust of this section of Charles's video is sort of like, hey, if we get another bad Gary Gensler SEC, what kind of shit could they pull on us given what they're allowed to create rules around under the Clarity Act? And so Claude here gives him, a number of attack vectors. Here are the things a bad Gary Gensler number 2 SEC could do. And, I hate to say it, like this first one is just like tolling. There are tolling exploits. This is a really common thing in regulatory law. Tolling exploits sort of used by the regulatory agency. This is like when there's a time period, like often a law will say, hey, the regulatory agency needs to do a certain thing within a certain time period. Here it's 60 days. But what often gets left out is what starts tolling, TOLLING, what starts tolling that 60 days. So what starts the clock? What's the trigger that starts the clock? So here the Clarity Act is not as specific about this as it could be. This is super common with respect to the way laws and regulations interact. And Claude is pointing out there could be a tolling exploit here. The SEC, a bad Gensler SEC, could figure out how not to start the 60-day clock. So I'm like, of course. And this is a super common thing with regulations and laws, right? This is the kind of thing you expect is going to happen with the Clarity Act. Does it suck for crypto? Yes, it sucks for crypto, but super common, like I said. So here you have questions around common control, right? Like when the SEC is deciding like which parties are actually the same party for determining like the centralization of ownership of a token, what constitutes common control? So you can say if I, AOS personally own a bunch of a token, and then I start an LLC of which I'm the sole member and it's member managed, or I'm the sole manager and it's manager managed. I own all the membership units in the LLC, and the LLC also owns a bunch of this token. It's like, that's really just me, right? That's what common control is, right? It's really just me. So this is another little exploit. Like a bad Gensler SEC could draw very broad definition of common control here. Actually, the SEC has a really specific way to determine, what kinds of entities are under common control with individual parties and entities under common control with other entities. This is really common in securities law, something you go through all the time when you're laying out, basically cap tables for the SEC, because the SEC wants to know, who owns this thing. If you're issuing securities to the public, who owns this thing? So this is really common, another really common thing. And yes, there are ways that this can be tilted against crypto entities. So there's lots of securities law stuff packed in here. This is really common. Attack vector number 3. So attack vector number 3, the pseudonymity burden of proof, engineering an unfulfillable evidentiary standard. The bill places the burden of proving maturity and decentralization on the filer. It does not specify what evidence is sufficient to discharge that burden. This is a live wire the SEC can use to electrify the filing process. So burdens are really important in all types of law, including regulatory law. And if the burden is on you to prove something, that's much worse than if the burden is on the other party, usually. So here, Claude is saying the SEC promulgates a beneficial ownership sufficiency standard requiring that any issuer filing for digital commodity graduation must demonstrate that no single beneficial owner or undisclosed group of coordinating owners controls more than 20% of network stake, voting power, or token supply. To affirmatively prove this negative, so you're proving a negative, filers must either provide KYC documentation for all wallets holding more than 0.5% of supply, or submit a third-party forensic blockchain analytic report certified by an SEC-registered blockchain forensic auditor, a registration category the SEC has not yet opened for applications. So you can see how all of this can get messed up by a bad SEC, right? Obviously, anything that has KYC, the acronym KYC in it, is not what we're looking for here, right? So the point that he's making is well taken, right? Things can go badly under a bad SEC. Here's another one. The bill's definition of digital commodity ties the asset's status to value derived from the use of the blockchain rather than just speculation. So utility versus speculation. And the exploit could be the SEC creates a primary value attribution framework requiring issuers to demonstrate that over the preceding 24 months, more than 50% of the asset's price appreciation net of broader crypto market beta is attributable to on-chain utility demand rather than secondary market speculation. You can see that might sound like a word salad to some people, but if you break that down and think about what they're saying, you have the burden to prove that over the last 2 years, 50% of the price was from utility rather than speculation. We've all been around crypto a while. We know a shitload of the price is speculation. So you can see how all this stuff goes wrong. Here's the thing about this, right? Just thinking about the way laws and regulations interact. So at least under the Clarity Act, there's a path. There's light at the end of the tunnel. If we have no Clarity Act, right? If we don't pass anything and we get to midterms and, a majority of the House or the Senate or both are taken by the party of the anti-crypto army, not saying everybody in that party is a member of the anti-crypto army, but everybody in the anti-crypto army is a member of that party, right? If that party takes either chamber, we might have nothing until 2029, right? We might not have anything for a long, long time. We may not be able to get any legislation through. And if we get another Gensler SEC, a Gensler SEC2, we're right back in the Gensler days because there is no path. There is no path to, being free of their oppression. There's no rules. So they can just decide to do whatever they want to do, just like the Gensler SEC. So I get what people like Brian Armstrong are saying. Obviously, he's more interested in the stablecoin yield. And I get what Charles is saying here too. This is not the bill we would write for ourselves. But if we have no bill again, and we do get another Gensler SEC, there's no path to being clear of the regulatory authorities. They can just do exactly what Gensler did. Sure. We can say Operation Choke Point 3.0 can't happen now because Operation Choke Point 2.0 has already been exposed. I'm not so sure about that. This is like an unresolved question, whether it would be bad to have this Clarity Act now versus have nothing for, potentially another several years. I don't think it's so clear cut as all this. Agreed, this is not the bill I would write for crypto. But I think no matter what bill you write, there's going to be promulgation of regulation by the SEC and the CFTC. No matter what bill you write, there's going to be corner cases that the legislation, the statutory law can't predict. So they're going to allow the SEC and CFTC to promulgate regulations under the Clarity Act. That's going to happen no matter what. And if you get a Gensler SEC2, they're going to do it in the way that's the worst possible for crypto. That's going to happen no matter what. And so I think the question is really, do you want there to be some framework or just no framework at all last time? So I don't think it's a clear-cut case. I think you can easily make a rational argument that it's better to have nothing, but I don't think it's a clear-cut binary thing. It's not so obvious that it's better to have nothing. That's what I'd say about this. So let's hit the comments and see what you guys think. Okay. Okay. S. Walker says, Puppers said, Daddy loves self-custody. CIA sucks. We'll never get our bones. Nice. Charles truly is inspiring. I agree with that. IOG took just 9.5%. The three of them together took exactly 20% of the Genesis cell. Okay. Yep. That's consistent with basically what I remember. I've watched Charles bleed for Cardano many, many times. I hate how there are trolls who claim to know what I know, but still fling shit at him anyway. I also hate that. Yeah. I mean, the dude, it's very difficult. I have yet to have anybody persuade me that Charles ever really did anything that was selfishly good for him and bad for Cardano, right? I mean, you can quibble over some of the decisions that were made. I think Charles would also change some of the decisions he made. He hired certain contractors who I won't name to build out certain things in Cardano, and then he had to rebuild them in-house because they were screwed up. So obviously there are decisions he would change. He'd be the first one to admit that, but I have yet to see him make, a self-centered decision that didn't seem like it was for the benefit of the community, So Streetwise says, my mom and I got a pick with Charles in Tokyo. Nice. Joy's testimony was kind of macking on the madre a bit too. I gotta say, Joy's testimony was talking to your mom. Interesting. Very, very interesting. Okay, I did not expect that. Okay, good to know. I hope when I'm I hope I'm in the same condition as Joy's testimony. I hope when I'm the same vintage as Joy's testimony, I hope I am in the same condition. I think we can all only hope for that. How can we create an agent at midnight? What happens if we create an account? So you can just log in. You can just log in with Discord and, be logged in. I don't know. I'm also curious about this question, when we can create our own agent. I don't know the answer to that. Yep. Midnight City. Yep. Mind blown by info and bill. Late, but so glad I made it. Yeah. I mean, so the thing you got to understand here is this is not what the bill is saying must happen. These are just attack vectors that a Gary Gensler SEC could go through. But what I'm trying to convey is the bill, no matter what bill we get, it's going to have to allow promulgation of regulations under the bill. So a bad SEC is going to do bad things no matter what, right? They're going to do things we don't want no matter what. So the question is, do you want a framework at least that they have to work through? Or do you want it to be like Gensler, where he had no framework and he could just do whatever he wanted, right? So, and I think reasonable people can come to different decisions on that, but it's not so clear cut to me. That's not so clear cut. So you can ask, I mean, let me put it this way. You could go to any LLM and ask them the same question about any bill, because any bill is going to have some regulatory agency promulgating regulations under it to deal with those corner cases, like I said. And you could get the LLM to spit out attack vectors for a bad regulatory agency under any law, basically. You could do this for any law. That's what I'm trying to say. To be announced, that's the Midnight City agents. Midnight it is. Grok now has 4 AI agents duking it out with each other to answer your questions or make stuff. I think that might be a first. I saw that. I saw they announced that the other day, that you had multiple AI agents working. I saw that come out as I was using Grok, and that sort of just popped up, and I was like, oh, okay, I haven't even heard about this yet. That was a few days ago. My guess is that they're going to focus on the network launch now until it's out, but we shall see. Yep. Charles makes an argument that is hard to go against. I mean, yeah, I mean, reasonable people can come to different conclusions on this, but that situation with Gensler was pretty bad, where it was just an open playground. I'm not so convinced. Like, if we got an executive branch, somebody from the anti-crypto army in the White House, and you get a bad Gensler, and like maybe that same party has control of both the House and the Senate. I don't know if you want to turn them loose with no framework. If you want to turn them loose with no laws, I am not so convinced. He told me he's the astronaut. Maybe I can have an astronaut stepdad. Yeah, Joyous Testimony definitely has an astronaut. He definitely shows up as an astronaut. I'll put it that way. That is certainly true. In all cases, you want tight, deliberate language for both government and private actors to follow. This vagueness will kill us every time. Yeah, I mean, obviously, if we wrote this, like, one of the things that people are going to have a lot of trouble with is the fact that you're assumed to be a security, and then you have to sort of prove that you're not a security. The problem is the way the security laws are written, you have to basically have to unlock registration or exemption. That's the way it all works. So it's going to be really hard not to end up in some kind of regime where you're assumed to be a security unless you unlock commodity status, because the security laws have been that kind of regime for so long. So I mean, we would write this differently. I would write the Clarity Act differently. Is that realistic? I don't know if it's realistic, right? I don't know if it's realistic. So the problem is tight, deliberate language is, given all the possible corner cases and 2 parties having to negotiate this bill, I don't know if it's possible to get tight language. I don't know if it's possible. I think almost no matter what, you end up with this vague language and a lot of promulgation of regulations under it by the SEC and the CFTC. So I don't know if it's possible. Wasn't Charles basing his attack vector prompts on the actual text of the bill? So he's asking the AI to come up with ways a bad SEC can exploit the language of the bill. What I'm saying is, you can do this for any bill. Like, take your pick, take any bill and do the same thing, whether it's like, whether it's like a federal land use bill, it's like, what would a bad BLM, what would a bad Bureau of Land Management do with this bill? You're going to get similar kind of exploits. In fact, some of them will even have the same title, like that first one that was about tolling. Tolling problems are super common, right? Super common with any kind of a law that has a tolling provision, like it has any kind of a time period provision. right? Unless you have, so this is a place where you could have really tight language, and they often don't, right? And it's because the people writing the legislation, they can't predict all the corner cases. They have to delegate some powers to the, I mean, this is why the regulatory agencies exist, right? Because Congress can't administer the law. It just writes the law. So it has to write this like broad law. And then the regulatory agencies write all the fine grain regulations. Like that's the way the whole federal system works. So when do you think the Bob Lazar new movie Project Gravatar, I think it is, will come out? Sure seems delayed. That's Luigi, what's his name? I don't know. I'm curious. People say that that's going to put away all doubt about Bob Lazar. Very interesting. Okay, let's move on. That's this video. I haven't watched the last part of this video where Charles is sort of just like freestyling. I haven't watched that, and I haven't watched the Wendy O video where I'm told he addresses some of the same topics. I will look at those, but this is honestly, this is what you see here is the kind of stuff. I mean, I don't want to talk shit about Claude, but this is like pretty basic stuff, right? This is pretty basic stuff. There's tolling problems. There could be tolling problems. You can mess around with the definition of common control. What was 3? 3, the burden of proof, weighs against the applicant, right? Like, this is all pretty basic, predictable stuff. The utility versus speculation thing is difficult. Yeah, this is all true. The question is, can we actually do any better? I don't know. The Democrats are not our friends. I hate to say it. Some of them are super pro crypto. Some of the people on the left are super pro crypto, but as a group, not very much in our favor now. So, okay, let's move on. I think that's about the best I can say about that. But like the things that Claude brought up here, these are just kind of like basic things that, it's like, like a first-year law student could pick out these same things. That's what I would say about that. So anyways, okay, here's something else. USDCX, be aware there's some discussion about the amount of liquidity. It's only been a couple days, so it's kind of too early to judge anything, but there's some discussion about the amount of liquidity in the markets for USDCX. So people are talking about that. I think it's too early for it to really mean anything, but I think it's kind of what I would say is this doesn't really surprise me in any way. This isn't like I'm not at all surprised by this because I've sort of contended that I don't think it's going to do USDCX is going to do what people hoped it would do. I haven't thought it was going to do what people hoped it would do, and this might be another shot at Clarity Act markup as stablecoin talks drag on. So this is no surprise. And Charles actually made a really good point about this during his video. He pointed out the only debate that's going on is about stablecoin yield, which is, I think, exactly what crypto shouldn't be focused on. But the difference is the only people negotiating are big crypto. This is Coinbase and A16Z and these kind of parties. They're the ones who are doing all the arguing. And they don't care about their interests aren't really aligned with ours. They don't really care about the same things we do. I think the things we should care about are the things that like Charles was covering, not the kinds of things, not the stablecoin yield thing. This is definitely true. We'd have a hell of a lot more lobbying power if we weren't currently in a crypto winter again. I think that is definitely true. So, okay, what have we got here? Here's Eleanor Terrett again. Remember that CBDC ban that didn't make it into the National Defense Authorization Act. It just resurfaced in Banking GOP's 21st Century Road to Housing Act, released minutes ago. Specifically, it bans the feds from directly or indirectly issuing a retail CBDC to consumers through an intermediary, but the provision sunsets in 2030. So this is another one. It was comforting when the owl said that he wasn't sure, the American people would even want this kind of thing, and that the Federal Reserve wasn't really interested in it because they didn't even know if the American people would want it. That was comforting. But we do know there are a lot of parties who would want a CBDC. These are the same parties who want a lot of control. They want a lot of control. They would love to have a CBDC. The same parties who, censored us on social media when we said the wrong things. Those seem to be the same parties that very much want a CBDC. And so you can see the problem here. You can imagine this, social credit hellscape where they also have a financial panopticon, and they can just turn off your dollars. So I think, it sounds kind of conspiracy theory crazy to worry about a CBDC right now. But after what we saw with the censorship on social media, I think we actually need to be worried about this. So the problem with this one is the sunsetting in 2030. You'd prefer like kind of a permanent ban on CBDCs, but the fact they had to put a sunset provision on it kind of tells you that there are some parties who very much want to at least keep a route for CBDCs open. So we'll see if this actually makes it through the, what's it called, Road to Housing Act. We'll see how that turns out. So here's another video. This video is actually somebody mentioned that this was from February 18th. I'm not sure when this interview came out. I thought this was kind of interesting though, just to give people some realistic ideas about when we could actually see a Clarity Act. So in this interview, it sounds like Brian Armstrong is saying, he sort of goes through like, oh, we need this to happen. We need this to happen. Here's all the good things. Here's all the progress we're making. And then right at the end, it sounds like he says, yeah, there's only a few open items left. And if we can get some good compromises on those open items, we could even see the Clarity Act in a few months, right? And I'm like, okay, that was February 18th, but he's talking about Q2. He's kind of saying in an optimistic case, we could see the Clarity Act in Q2. When it comes to legislation, especially crypto legislation, I usually add a couple quarters onto the optimistic version. So that pushes right up against the elections. So I think we're definitely in the danger zone of not getting this Clarity Act passed this year, going through midterms, and maybe not seeing a Clarity Act for a long time. I think that's very possible. People should prepare themselves for that possibility. Pupper said, no turning off the smoke in my bones. Fair enough. As a European, I wish for clarity in American politicians' heads. Reality is not black and white, bipartisan, or even purely political. Can they just represent the people already? I wish. We all wish, Dolphy Wolf. Not saying it's that much better in Europe. Yeah, I mean, I think this is a problem with politicians in a lot of places. I think any American would agree, though. American politics are especially polarized right now. I know that's also true. I often have discussions. I'll put it this way. When I was in the Fiat Mines, I would often have discussions with colleagues in Europe about European, sort of domestic politics, especially in one particular country in Europe. And, similar trends, obviously. But, U.S. politics are very tribalistic, very polarized right now. So not too much all of us here on this video watching this episode can do right now, but very unfortunate. Okay, speaking of unfortunate things, Brown Beardo says, yeah, maybe if the Senate schedule was empty, unfortunately we have bigger fish to fry than the Clarity Act to handle first. True. Yeah, it's really not. It is not a home run. Getting the Clarity Act in 2026 is not a home run, guys, because there's a lot going on right now. So speaking of unfortunate things, though, here is more reason why what we're trying to do in Cardano is important, right? What we're trying to do in Cardano is important. You can make arguments about MEV in Cardano because we have batchers in our dexes, at least until Gravity comes out, according to the Gravity people. Gravity says they can do it without batchers. So, MEV transaction ordering is possible. via batchers on Cardano dexes, but it does not occur to the same extent as we see it in the rest of crypto. Here's a post. A trader swapped 220,000 USDC to USDT. So there shouldn't be any impermanent loss, but impermanent loss was not the problem, and only received 5,000 because he got MEV'd. Minor extractable value. Now they try to call it maximal extractable value. A crypto trader gets sandwich attacked while making a stablecoin swap, losing over 215,000 to a MEV bot. Guess what, guys? This is the opposite of utility. This is the opposite of a good product for retail. This is horrible, a horrible user experience. This is a horrible, we talk about UX in crypto. There is no UX in crypto, right? I know. We're really talking about using platforms and things like that, but in the normal English sense of the word, there is no good user experience in crypto. If this is even remotely possible, right? You are trading dollars for dollars essentially, and you lose 215,000 to some fucking miner. This is some bullshit. I keep saying at one point in the future, like the FBI and some courts are going to decide this is fraud, and people will start going to jail for this shit. That's what I believe will happen in the future. It just takes like a few policymakers in the FBI after like one court case or even before the court case. They just have to decide this is fraud, and all of a sudden this will be considered fraud, right? It's like, man, you put this in front of a judge and ask him if this looks like fraud to him, right? This is a huge problem for crypto. And Cardano does not have this problem in the same way that like the EVM world does. So this is a huge argument for Cardano right here. So moving on to IR, there's still a lot of IR news, but let's see. I thought you were making a joke. Gravity is a thing. No, Gravity is a real DEX project. Gravity is a real DEX project that purports not to have batchers. So that's a real project. I did not make that up. I have nothing to do with the project. I have nothing to do with that project, but they're purporting they can do without batchers. So it's interesting. Where can we download your tracks and the one from yesterday's session? That's a question to you, Pucky Hawk. Let him know. I believe it's on Pucky Hawk can tell you better, but I believe it's on his X. If you go to Pucky Hawk's X profile, which he can probably tell you what that is, I believe you'll find those tracks. Okay, so Marco Rubio. I don't understand how the EVM world doesn't bother to fix MEV. The real problem is they can't. They can't because they have they basically have global mempool. So they would quibble with the use of my use of words there, but they don't. The reason we don't have it in Cardano is Cardano's architecture. Cardano was built without a global mempool, so we don't have the same problem. But in the EVM world, it works just like Bitcoin, and it doesn't work just like Bitcoin, but in the sense that you have a mempool with all the transactions, and you can pick and choose. The validators can pick and choose how those transactions get ordered. That's the real problem. It's more like Cardano was genius for getting rid of the problem, right? So, and it's the fundamental distinction is global state versus local state. The same reason why we don't have failed transactions, why we have local determinism, and why how much the gas fees are going to be in Cardano and you don't in the EVM world. Same reason, global state versus local state. Yeah, pretty much. Pucky Hawk says, well, I have a lot more tracks on YouTube. Go to wait, how to link this. So you can't, to control the scammers who spam the comments here, you can't actually post links, but you can find a way to give them, if you sort of write it out, you can write out your X profile if you want to, and then you can tell them how to get to your X profile. This was the heart of Charles' argument. No way to have issues decided by a judge. So So unfortunately, the way federal law works, you're going to have promulgation of regulations by the agency no matter what you do. Like, no matter what you do, that law is going to say the SEC can promulgate regulations under it. It's not going to be up to us because it's the way federal law works. So you're going to have the SEC promulgating regulations. But yeah, I mean, part of the problem with sort of having a regulatory state, regulatory bureaucracy, part of the problem is that the regulator gets to decide. They get to sit in the shoes of the judge in a lot of cases. You're going to end up with that no matter what. I hate to say it, but just to be realistic, we're going to end up with that no matter what. Okay. Moving on to IR, there's still quite a bit of IR stuff to cover. There's still very interesting stuff going on. Okay, Streetwise says, I have much schadenfreude toward ETH and its smugness. What projects or chains do you think are threats to Cardano from a technical or design standpoint? I mean, nobody can really touch us on the decentralization thing that's anywhere near the top 10, right? Because the way newer chains are getting close to the top 10 is by going the Solana route, and that's the opposite of decentralization. So the other decentralized chains, the ones that approach our decentralization, they're so far down the list now. It's like, I don't know. It depends on what you think, though. If by from a technical or design standpoint, if that has to include decentralization, then nobody seems to be challenging us very effectively. But if you just want Solana style success, that can be done. Okay, there you go. The dysfunctional wits, but on YouTube, it is the pic with the stone glowy red letter logo. Okay, there you go. There you go. On a lighter note, your thoughts on the Scary Movie 6 trailer during a time where political correctness, equity, inclusivity, safe spaces, and participation trophies are abundant. I haven't seen it yet. Is it good? Is it good? I found Thunder Spanker. Must be on a different channel. Thunder Spanker. That sounds familiar, actually. Okay. Marco Rubio laid out some very interesting things to know about the administration's stance on the current Persian Gulf military activities. So this is important to understand if you want to understand what's going on in the Persian Gulf right now. He said current U.S. objectives are just to destroy the clerical regime's ballistic missile and drone capacities so they can't hide behind those capabilities while building nuclear weapons, and to destroy their naval capacity so they can't blockade the Strait of Hormuz. Notice he didn't say regime change. He didn't say regime change is a goal. He's like, we just want to knock out their ballistic missile and drone capacity so they can't hide behind those and build nuclear weapons, and knock out their naval capacity so they can't blockade the Strait of Hormuz. So this is really different than what a lot of people assumed. A lot of people assumed that regime change would have to be a goal to declare success in Iran. They're not saying that at all. They're specifically saying that's not the case. If the people of Iran are able to accomplish regime change, that would be wonderful, but it's not a part of the current U.S. objectives, and the U.S. is not currently postured for ground forces. You can imagine probably their biggest background program running in the back of their brains is don't get involved in a ground war right before midterms. If the U.S. would have waited another year, the clerical regime would have only increased their stockpile of things like ballistic missiles and drones and been able to inflict even more damage across the region. So they're saying they had to do this now because if they waited another year or anything like that, there just would have been more damage to all of these Gulf states. The biggest strikes on the clerical regime are still to come, and a lot of people speculated that would start happening tonight, North America time. Rubio briefed the Gang of Eight twice before the operation, even though the War Powers Act only requires letting them know within 48 hours after initiation of hostilities. You're going to hear a lot of, basically rumbling from the left about the War Powers Act. Here, Rubio is pointing out he actually briefed the Gang of Eight twice, and he reiterated that it's impractical to brief all 535 members of Congress. That's not going to happen. They're not going to be able to do that ever. And he's saying he actually briefed them all twice. We know that the night before the strike, he called 7 of the 8 of them and briefed them again on the phone. But he says he actually briefed all 8 of them the week before. So he thinks they're good on War Powers Act stuff, because the rule is they just have to let Congress know within 48 hours after the initiation of basically kinetic hostilities. So there you go. Pucky Hawk says, this name is not what I upload with. I'm old and lazy, so I just leave it. I can come in here on that name. Be right back. Okay, this is the account I use for stuff. Okay, the dysfunctional wits. There you go. That's Pucky Hawk. Professor G. Scott Galloway discusses with Admiral Severitis on Raging Moderates today with Jessica Tarlov. Okay, I haven't seen that. I know who Scott Galloway is, but I've not seen that. Interesting. Okay. So, okay. Trump also confirmed what Rubio indicated. The biggest strikes on the clerical regime are still coming. And he said this in that way that you know something's going to happen pretty soon. Pretty big strikes. No surprise. First, they have to take out a lot of the air defenses. Of course, it was not a shocker that last night B-1 Lancers were in there. It's like after a lot of anti-air defense assets had been taken out, suddenly you see the very stealthy B-2 bombers, and then you see the less stealthy B-1 Lancers. So they're getting to the point where less and less stealthy vessels can get in there and drop very, very big payloads. So no surprise, the biggest strikes on the clerical regime are still coming. You're not going to send in your biggest, slowest aircraft when there's still a lot of anti-aircraft capability in the adversary's hands. So some people were surprised by this. Today, the U.S. Embassy in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, had been struck by, when ABC posted this, it was 2, but there were reports that there was actually a 3rd drone. Fortunately, the embassy was relatively empty when the drone struck. But still, you can imagine MBS pretty pissed that the Iranian regime is striking just sort of whenever it wants on Saudi Arabia, even though Saudi Arabia refused to let its airspace get used by the U.S. and Israel for the strikes. Okay. Come on and load. There we go. President Trump says you'll find soon what the retaliation will be for the attack on the U.S. Embassy in Riyadh and for the U.S. service members killed, adding that he doesn't think boots on the ground will be necessary. Nobody is mentioning boots on the ground at this point. So, you could argue that maybe that'll all change. Here is some imagery. Reports from Iran claim the Iraq nuclear complex has been destroyed. And you can understand this is what they're really after. They really want to take out Iran's nuclear capability. And they also need to take out its ballistic and drone capabilities. So, little naval update. 2 days ago, this is from CENTCOM. 2 days ago, the Iranian regime had 11 ships in the Gulf of Oman. Today, they have 0. The Iranian regime has harassed and attacked international shipping in the Gulf of Oman for decades. Those days are over. Freedom of maritime navigation has underpinned American and global economic prosperity for more than 80 years. The U.S. forces will continue to defend it. Yeah, a big part of the global police thing, the world police thing that was, has been mocked by, movies like Team America World Police. A big part of the world police thing was allowing global shipping, and that is definitely what the Iranians are threatening to cut off when they talk about blockading the Strait of Hormuz. Speaking of naval vessels, here was their drone carrier, the Bagheri drone carrier, which was hit and was currently sinking at last report, according to the U.S. Navy. The U.S. Navy very happy to take out this drone carrier. So here's some footage. Get this playing. Here's some footage. Earlier, this was posted earlier today, and this was supposed to reflect sort of the blockade activity. You can see this is the Strait of Hormuz right here. Very thin stretch of water. What is this? Somebody in the comments will know. This is like something like 20 miles or something across here. It's a very thin stretch of water. And you can see as this video plays, all of a sudden, almost no ships going back and forth. So that's exactly what they're talking about. Okay. Yesterday we talked about these American-made Lucas drones. The US was like, okay, Iran, you love to make these Shahed drones that you're giving to the Russians to use against the Ukrainians. You use them in the 12-day war. You're obviously going to use them this time. We'll just have this company in Arizona make our own Shahed drones. We'll call them low-cost unmanned combat attack systems, Lucas drones. Here's a close-up of one that fell in Iraq. That is a Lucas, American-made, Arizona-made Lucas drone. So something else interesting on the technology front. This is the iron beam being used. This post says, no longer a conspiracy theory. Iran just used a directed energy weapon. Or sorry, Israel just used a directed energy weapon. Israel used their high-powered laser weapon, the Iron Beam. Here they're taking out rockets from Hezbollah, I believe. And people were confused by this. What the comments that seem to clarify this are that these are the rockets coming up like this, and the Iron Beam, which is an invisible laser, is destroying those rockets. So you see that one got hit really low right there. That one got hit really low right there. This one makes it a little further, and then boom, the laser gets it. This one right there gets hit. So what is the Iron Beam? Iron Beam is Israel's groundbreaking 100 kilowatt plus high energy laser weapon system developed by Rafael Advanced Defense Systems and Elbit Systems to intercept rockets, drones, and missiles with a low-cost, near-limitless magazine. As of early 2026, it is being deployed for operational use with a range of up to 10 kilometers. So now they're calling it Aton's Beam. They kind of changed the name. This is after the name of an IDF soldier who was the son who got killed. It was the son of someone involved in the development of this technology. Uses a high energy laser to burn through threats in seconds, providing a second layer of defense. And people keep saying like, oh, this is actually old technology, but actually the old technology, we have messed around with lasers on like planes. Like they used to build, I think they were DC-10s. They'd build like a big chemical laser on the front of a DC-10 way back in the day, and the US abandoned it because it was too cumbersome, wasn't worth it. But the Iron Beam actually uses a fiber laser to generate a laser beam to destroy an airborne target. So it's not a chemical laser, it's a fiber laser. A fiber laser is a laser in which the active gain medium is an optical fiber doped with rare earth elements such as erbium, ytterbium, neodymium, dysprosium, praseodymium, thulium, and holmium. Oh no, you're using the same rare earth neodymium as my magnets. I need those for magnets for certain things. Iron Beam people, please do not jack up the price of neodymium. So anyways, this is a different type of laser than the lasers you might be thinking of, chemical lasers, as were used in early versions of like airborne lasers. But pretty impressive, I think, for that video. This was very much not impressive. So the New York Times ran with this headline. We talked about this a little bit the other day, but I think this makes it even, this like highlights the ridiculousness of this. New York Times, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, hardline cleric who made Iran a regional power, is dead at 86. Visegrad points out, this is exactly like if they had posted Führer Adolf Hitler, dog-loving artist who made Germany a world power, is dead at 56. So I'd be totally in favor if we could just sell the New York Times to the Islamic Republic of Iran Broadcasting Network. That's state TV in Tehran. We should just sell it. We should just sell it to them. Why do I think it's such a moral imperative that if we can do something to help the people of Iran, we do it? And why do I think it's fair to compare the clerical regime to some of the worst characters, in the last century? So here's why I feel that way. So in this day of AI, you can kind of argue that anything could be AI, anything could be produced. We don't really know what's real or not, but there are a hell of a lot of accounts since the 1980s related to this regime, exactly like this one. This is pretty dark. But I'm going to read this to people just for anybody who doesn't understand the kind of regime we're dealing with here. So this post says, "Where is the world's outrage?" And this is someone who this is posted by someone who was born and raised, did all their schooling in Tehran at, government approved, educational institutions, and only then left Iran. This is not somebody who was not born and raised in Iran posting this. But this post is, "Where's the world's outrage? After their daughter, Venus Moradi, was killed." So she was killed, presumably in a protest, right? Many, many young girls and young men were shot in the head for being at protests. After their daughter, Venus Moradi, was killed, her mother went to a regime courthouse demanding answers. And this is pretty dark. So you may want to turn off this podcast if you want to hear something very dark. So fair warning. She asked a simple and unbearable question: "Why was my child killed? What was her crime?" The regime's answer was to arrest her. In the video, her husband explains she was taken to a detention facility and raped by the regime forces as punishment for asking why her daughter was killed. Crushed by the grief and horror, her father attempted suicide but didn't kill himself, didn't die. And then he recorded this video explaining the entire thing with the poor girl's poor mother. Horrible, horrible, dark, evil stuff. I think pretty much anybody who sees this, unless you can convince yourself this isn't real, and there are many, many, many similar accounts since the 1980s with this regime, you've either got to convince yourself this isn't real, this is all fake, this is CIA propaganda, or this is one of the worst regimes in the entire world, right? There's very good reason to get rid of this regime unless you convince yourself this stuff is all fake. So that's very dark, but I wanted to make it clear why I think it's so important we do anything we can to help the people of Iran. Okay. Schwag says, regarding bad bill versus no bill, I'm with Charles. When Gensler acted without a bill, he was challenged in court and lost several times. The current bill allows unchallengeable bad rules. Well, I mean, they're not, so only certain things are unchallengeable, right? But then again, it's like, how well did that challenge work out for Ripple, right? It's like, did that really work out for Ripple, or were they tied up in litigation forever, right? I don't know if that's a good result. I don't know if Ripple fighting that in court is actually a good result for crypto, because as Charles also pointed out in that video, like, Charles at least believes that all of the established cryptos are going to get grandfathered in, and it'll be the new crypto projects that have to go through this process. So how much can a new crypto project really afford the kind of litigation war chest that Ripple could? Ripple already made their money. They already had the money sitting there, right? They were already a top 10 cryptocurrency with a gigantic litigation war chest and the right incentives because they were so centralized in their holdings. Ripple had so much money already. New crypto projects don't really have that kind of money, right? Okay, we're going to look at it. We're going to look at it, S. Walker. We're going to look at it. So, okay. So here's something else, right? Like I mentioned before, last night we saw B-1 Lancers actually being used against Iran. So this is a sign that they're getting less and less worried about Iranian anti-aircraft activities. B-1 Lancers making an appearance. Here is the Saudi Aramco oil refinery, or it's an oil refinery of Saudi Arabia, Aramco. So obviously the clerical regime more than happy to reach out and attack the oil infrastructure of its Gulf neighbors, despite claiming they're only attacking the US bases. So Saudis are the Iranian regime doing exactly what we expect. They're just attacking their neighbors because they hate them, and they always have. Like, that's something that I think everybody realizes. The Iranians do not actually like any of their Arab neighbors, and that is, part of the reason that all the Arab Gulf states are kind of on our side on this one. So the Hillary Clinton congressional testimony finally came out. The full videos are out. You can go watch the whole videos. Obviously, the part I'm interested in is the part where a few Congress people decided to ask her about UAP stuff. So Burleson, Representative Burleson, who's a part of the UAP caucus, decided to ask her a few questions about UFOs. And what was really interesting is he asked her about the Lawrence Rockefeller thing, and Hillary was not too surprised by the question. She didn't do the whole like, oh my God, it's so hilarious. You're asking me about UFOs. This is such a lighthearted, ridiculous moment. Instead, she said that she was going to make the files public herself. We know that from emails that were hacked from her list of hacked emails. We already knew that, but she was going to make the files public if she'd been elected president. And she's pleased. He asked her, are you pleased that Trump is starting this disclosure thing where he's making those files public? And she admitted she's pleased, which is kind of shocking. I was very surprised to hear Hillary Clinton say she was pleased with anything Donald Trump was doing, but she said she's pleased with it. So this disclosure thing has been going on for a long time, and there is a different branching timeline where Hillary had gotten elected. And I think the disclosure that's going on right now would have actually happened back then. It's like we'd be so much further ahead in terms of disclosure. Thank God it's actually happening now, though. So then Representative Luna, this is where it got really wild. So Representative Luna actually asked Hillary about both UAPs and the Gilgamesh inquiry from her emails. So a lot of people might not know about this, but when the Hillary emails got hacked, there were these really weird emails, right? So the emails look like this. There's this little entry in the emails, December 13th, 2018. There's a description of this email requesting documents pertaining to the resurrection chamber of Gilgamesh, the location of his body, and the location of the buried Nephilim. Did you ever think you would see any emails related to the office of Hillary Clinton that mentioned the resurrection chamber of Gilgamesh or the location of the buried Nephilim? So the hilarious part is Luna actually asked her about this. And again, she didn't do the weird thing. The question was, were you ever denied access, or did you ever inquire on the topic of UAP or Gilgamesh in your official personal capacity, and why? And Hillary didn't like laugh and act like, oh my God, this is so ridiculous. They're asking me about the resurrection chamber of Gilgamesh. That wasn't her reaction at all. Her reaction was more like, nope, I actually didn't make that inquiry. So no, I wasn't ever denied access because I never asked for access. Very interesting matter of fact question about, or answer to the question about Gilgamesh's resurrection chamber and the location of the buried Nephilim. Super wild, right? I mean, you could argue that Hillary is just like, stone cold politician. So she's not going to react either way, no matter what. But she actually got pretty emotional. There were some emotional reactions at various times during this testimony. If you watch the whole thing, I haven't watched it all, but I think we all saw the reports that she got pretty pissed at one point. But on that point, she was very matter of fact, and she's like, I didn't make those requests, so I didn't make any requests for access, so I wasn't denied access. Very interesting. So Pucky Hawk takes the angle. She's a good actor. I won't deny that. I mean, she's a stone cold politician, that lady. She is a politician if there's ever a politician. So here's something else very unusual. So if you're familiar with all the UAP disclosure stuff from back in those days, and especially the stuff around To the Stars Academy and Tom DeLonge and his correspondence with some of Hillary's people, you might remember this name, Major General Neil McCasland. So Major General Neil McCasland recently went missing in New Mexico. There's like a silver alert out for this guy right after Trump says, hey, we're going to disclose everything. We're going to do the big disclosure thing. So if you don't remember the whole thing with him in 2018, there's this message from Tom DeLonge to the now very, very controversial John Podesta, who is an advisor, campaign manager, chief of staff to both Bill and Hillary, and advisor to Obama. So this is Tom DeLonge sending an email to Podesta, but there's quite a bit of back and forth between the two of them. So Tom DeLonge, he mentioned, so this is General McCaslin. It's about this guy. He mentioned he's a skeptic. He's not. I've been working with him for 4 months. I just got done giving him a 4-hour presentation on the entire project a few weeks ago. Trust me, the advice is already been happening on how to do all this. He just has to say that out loud, but he is very, very aware, as he was in charge of all of the stuff. When Roswell crashed, they shipped it to the laboratory at Wright-Patt Air Base. McCaslin was in charge of that exact laboratory up to a couple of years ago. He not only knows what I'm trying to achieve, he helped assemble my advisory team. That's the people at To the Stars Academy. He's a very important man. So very interesting that he disappears right now, right as disclosure finally gets underway. So I thought that was pretty interesting. Okay. S. Walker, this is it. This is what we're talking about, right? This is the one. Okay, where's S. Walker? Is he talking to his wife again? Is he talking to his wife? Okay. So S. Walker asked, so what did you think? Did it look like a disc to you, taking that location into context? So tell me first, S. Walker, if you're still around, tell me first, is this what you're talking about? Yes. Okay. Let's zoom in, guys. Let's zoom in on this. Let's get a better shot. So this was exactly where S. Walker described it. So you can see, I mean, there are other similar discolorations. Like these little things, even before S. Walker identified this location, I looked at this when I was sort of like scouring all of Diego Garcia, trying to find what he was describing. And these little things right here, I don't know if there's some kind of like water circulation thing. You know how they'll often have like a fountain in a pond like this to keep some water flow so you don't have stagnant water and, you know, all the things like mosquito problems and moss and all that kind of stuff. So they seem to have these in other years. This is a historical photo from 2023, I believe. They seem to have these in all of the ponds. You can't see them as much over here. But if you look at this discoloration, we also have some of that up in this corner and a little bit down in here, a little bit over here, and then quite a bit of it over here. You know, as far as like pure shape, like it's definitely kind of a disc. I mean, you know, a disc almond shaped. It's kind of the right shape. I think it's interesting. In the other photos from other years of Diego Garcia, you definitely don't see this. You do see some more of this like discoloration. So I think it's interesting. I think if you saw, let's see, Pucky Hawk says those are definitely holding tanks. S. Walker says, yes, they are. That would be logical. Got to keep the water circulating, keep down on algae. Yep. Run filters. So yeah, I mean, it's kind of like when you go to like amusement parks and they have a big pond like this, you know, I think like they will have like a fountain in the middle. You see this a lot outside of the US where they don't actually use filters because like filter medium is something you have to buy. Whereas if you just have a fountain running, you're going to have like some oxygenation of the water and some movement of the water, that kind of thing. It's no surprise that they have those kind of like little fountains going on. What this is right here, I mean, whether this is just, I mean, this could be like floating scum on the surface. It could be, you know, like a difference in depth. You know, it could be that, you know, it could be glare. There's a number of things, but I think if you showed this to sort of like the UAP guys, they'd be interested. They'd be interested in this. You'd have like, you know, some number of people who'd be like, oh, this is very interesting. number of people would just dismiss this as one of those things, like glare on the water, pond scum, any number of things, a difference in depth, producing like a little bit different color. I think it is very interesting though. Let's see, are you using the filters? So are you asking about the filters in the water or a filter on the photo? If this is just the raw Google Earth photo, I just took a screenshot. If you're asking about filters on the photo, image filters. No, this is the raw photo. This is like the raw photo. So you could definitely throw this through some filters and really pump up this image, but this is the raw photo from Google Earth. I posted this in another podcast a long time ago. Satellites retask 6 days after I posted. Not kidding. Oh, interesting. So Streetwise is skeptical. That brown blotch is a disk. From my educated view, a lot of that is light glare. I thought you were talking about the rusty top of the tanks near the airfield, maybe. Nope, I believe, yeah, these are definitely the tanks. Water moves and creates different areas of light diffusion. True. Save the photo and then run filtered. Yep, I've already got it saved. Run filtered and it brings her out. Okay, cool. Yeah, I'll check that out. Some of that is not normal. Yeah, okay. Yeah, I'll check it out. I think it's pretty interesting. Hell, if I was going to try to hide a UFO, Diego Garcia is not the last place. It's interesting too, because I mean, your first reaction when you see this is, wouldn't they just put it in the ocean? Because if you look at anybody who's looked at this on Google Maps or Google Earth, you can see this is very, very close to the beach and the water. It's not a giant beach. It's like very close to the water. So no, I think this is very interesting. I'm glad you pointed this out. It's something we'll never resolve. Like we're never going to know. We'll never be able to resolve this one way or another. So this is the kind of stuff, it's just interesting to look at. Streetwise says this is definitely swamp gas or weather balloon guys or birds, right? Or we're experiencing parallax as a mosquito flies in front of the lens. The light does not diffuse from underneath the water like in the middle area toward the left. Yeah, those are just, let's see, those are just waste settling ponds with an overflow pipe going to the ocean. Perfect place to hide a UFO under poop water. For generals, notice small bleachers by small tank. Oh, okay. Here, let me go zoom out so you guys can see the small bleachers. Or are you talking about right there? Let's see, we can zoom in on those. You're talking about those ones right there, right? They definitely, you can see how close it is to the water. Like the water is right there. The water is definitely just right there. So it's like very, very close. This could be a new segment. We find cool stuff on Google Maps and speculate. I like it. Yeah, definitely. Send me anything. Small tank. Smaller tank. Yeah, it's that one I was pointing at, right? That smaller one on top. Yeah, it's very interesting. Okay, I'll try the filtering on the image and see what I can see. It's very interesting. I mean, like obviously, so what I was getting at though is your first reaction when you see this is like, okay, they have the entire Indian Ocean right there. Like, why wouldn't they just put it offshore under the water? There's a lot of reasons for that. If you're trying to hide something, obviously, it's much easier to keep people away from it. If it's in some holding tank like this, you can secure in the ocean. Any sub or boat or whatever could just come right up to it. Here, you could keep it a little more secure. There's probably so many servicemen have been on Diego Garcia. There's probably eventually we'll find somebody who's actually been to this holding tank and can tell us like, hey, that thing's only 2 feet deep, or yeah, that could be something. Somebody will probably know. Eventually we'll find somebody who actually knows something about these holding tanks, because Diego Garcia is a very small place, very limited number of things for people to do there. And I assume like American servicemen are probably like going jogging or like riding bicycles, stuff like that, just to get bored. And there's like paths right there. So I wouldn't be at all surprised if we find an American serviceman who's like jogged through here or something like that. Makes sense that it's kind of how fish are farm raised, minnow tank, and then bigger ones for when they grow. Yeah, I mean, there's definitely like all over Asia, you can find places where they're farming shrimp, like freshwater shrimp, tilapia in like very shallow ponds, just like this. That's like super common. They are bleachers. It's a treacherous path for overflow. Okay. Look at the south part or secluded areas. Really interesting. South part of the atoll, right? South part of the atoll. Is that two photos put together? So no, this is just, I literally just went to where S. Walker indicated on Google Earth and just took a screenshot. So that's just a screenshot. You can find that on Google Earth. It's just one. Were you thinking that because of the darkness right here? I mean, Google Earth does some weird splicing and stuff like that. So possible. Correct. Okay, south part of the atoll. Okay. Yeah, I'll check it out. So, guys, I think we've covered all of the interesting news for today. I hope everybody is starting out a great week, and I will talk to you soon. So Omar says the satellite concatenates thousands of images. Yep, certainly. Okay. Hope everybody's having a great day, great night, and I will talk to you soon.